Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing. Forget about it. Bad Brad Berkwood, and you're watching the Bad Brad Berkwood Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Make sure you hit that button and subscribe. Leave your comments below this episode. Let's have a conversation. Forget about it. Hey, today, folks, I told you I would be bringing you some of the 80s best singers and groups, which is my generation when I was a teenager. This gentleman is all the way across the pond. He is part of one of the biggest bands of the 80s, Wang Chung. He's a singer, he's a guitarist, he's a songwriter, and he is my guest today. Welcome to the show, Nick Feldman. Okay, we're recording. Well, first of all, Nick, appreciate it from all the way across the pond, you coming on.
My pleasure, great to be with you.
6 hours ahead. I did an interview recently with somebody you toured with, David Sterry from Real Life.
Ah, Dave, yeah, lovely guy.
And he was in Australia, which was like 12 or 13. It was Sunday
Yeah.
there, Saturday here. So I said to him, since you're ahead in the next day, could he give me the lottery numbers that I could play here so I could win? I'd split it with him 50-50. But hey.
Okay, I'll have to try that. So, yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah.
Exactly. Before we get into the Q&A, let me throw the C word out, COVID. How you dealing with COVID over there?
Well, I know it's pretty bad in the States, isn't it? I have to say it's not too great here either. I don't think their government's performed terribly well. So they've sort of late to act on various things. So I think a lot of people have died, unfortunately, that they didn't need to. But, you know, I think mostly people are sort of trying to go along with it, if you know what I mean. But I mean, it's touched my life. You know, my mum, who's very elderly, she got it a month or two ago, and we really thought we were going to lose her. She was really ill, and she ended up in hospital, but she miraculously survived, and she's a very old lady. So, and my son's had it, and he seems to be okay. And his boss, he was in this meeting with his boss. He's a journalist, my son, and he was in a meeting with his boss. They just had a one-off kind of meeting to plan the next issue of the paper, and everyone in the meeting, all four people, got COVID from one person. Two of them ended up in hospital. His boss is still in intensive care, and the other person was in hospital, is now out. And he's okay, thank God. But so this is serious stuff, you know. I know some people kind of a bit skeptical about it, but to me, I'm taking it very seriously.
Yeah, I am too. And I don't want to pull you into politics, but we have somebody here that likes to call it a hoax, and it is not a hoax, as we both know.
No, I mean, don't get me started on that certain person.
Oh, we could go there if you want to later on.
Okay, well then I got plenty to say.
Okay, well then we could go there because I have no problem with that. But hey, what I want to do is I want to go all the way back to the beginning, and then we'll go forward from there. You have an interesting family history. Your father was a baron, and correct me if I'm wrong, a conservative member in the House of Lords. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't talk about it an awful lot, but yes, I'm very proud of him, and he's an amazing guy. He passed away actually last year, just over a year ago, actually. Again, very old guy. It's an amazing guy, really. He started from very modest, you know, beginnings. He was brought up in the East End of London, in the sort of, you know, the less well-off areas, and really worked his way up himself, you know, and became a successful guy, businessman, and then started to get involved in politics. He ironically started on the more left side of the political spectrum, and sort of slowly kind of moved to he was never super right wing, but he was a bit more obviously conservative and Tory. But he was very quite visionary in terms of how to sort of approach campaigning and sort of the more sort of forward-thinking ideas, which I think he was very influenced by the American sort of way of sort of doing things. And I think he brought that to the UK and to the Conservative Party, and was really kind of, I think he helped to transform them in better ways. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a Conservative voter, and I don't like the government we have now at all. But nonetheless, I respect his achievement, and the fact that he was recognised by his country is pretty great, you know. And talk of politics. My uncle, so my mother's sister's husband, was someone called William Sapphire, who you may know, a very prominent political guy and writer in America, who worked. He worked on the New York Times and all sorts of, and wrote lots of interesting books. So I think he and my father used to sort of trade lots of ideas and stuff, and you know, so there's certainly an interesting political kind of connection in my family. But
okay, and your aunt, now your aunt was actress Fenella Fielding.
That's right. Yeah, you certainly have done your research, haven't you?
Now, is that your mom's sister, or is that your father's sister?
No, it's my father's sister.
Okay.
Yeah, she became a very big star especially in the UK. You know.
Oh yeah.
And you know, comedic. Well, she's a really good actress, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know she is. Well, I know
but she she passed away again about a year ago. But I got on really well with her, and she's very charismatic, and I think possibly she could have had a slightly. She did a lot of comedic movies and TV shows, and she was very popular. I think maybe she could have sort of evolved that a bit more than she did. The famous film director Federico Fellini, loved her, was obsessed, and wrote a film specially influenced by her persona. But she, for one reason or another, couldn't do the movie, and I think that's a real shame she couldn't do that. But you know, a fascinating woman, and I loved hanging out with her. She was great.
No doubt. And I tell you what, if your father, from doing my research, your father and her lived to be well into their 90s, right?
That's right. Yeah, they were. They
got a lot of years left in you if you're going by your family's DNA. They lived in their 90s. So you're going to be with us, giving us some great music for many more years to come.
Okay, I'll be rocking when I'm in my 90s. Yeah, Wang Chung in the world when I'm 98. You know, I hope so.
There you go. Well, it looked like you attended the University of Liverpool and originally studied for a period of time psychology. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean I was sort of. I was fascinated by psychology, as I still am, and I used to read books on, you know, Carl Jung and Freud, and you know, I was just genuinely interested in it. My mum actually was a counsellor, so a relations counsellor. So I used to be fascinated with, you know, she used to tell me all about, she never told me the names of her clients, but she used to kind of discuss them, and I found them it was really interesting. So I was genuinely interested in psychology, and that's why I chose to do it. I suppose under slight pressure from my parents, you know, I wanted to just do music. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I didn't really want to go to university, but they were like, "Oh, come on, you should go. You just this music thing probably won't work out, and it's all a bit of a fantasy. It's lovely you're doing it, but don't, you know, let's be real here." So you go to university, and you know, you should have something to fall back on. And I was like, but I sort of deferred to them, you know, and so I went to university. When I actually had to do psychology and philosophy, but I found it profoundly disappointing, the actual course, the work, you know. It was it was trying to be sort of too scientific and statistical, and it didn't really appeal to me at all. And I just became more interested in studying alcoholology instead of psychology. I did no work, basically. I was drinking a lot and hanging out, and in the end they threw me out after 2 years, quite rightly.
Okay.
which was turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because that just pushed me into doing what I really wanted to do, which was to get into the music business, you know. So in a way, that cloud had a silver lining. It just, you know, I really got on with it. And my parents weren't too happy, by the way. They were very worried about me. They thought I was heading for the rack and ruin, you know. But so for a good few years, they were very worried. But eventually, it kind of worked out, and they were very proud of me.
I gotta ask you, Nick, because you got some good little one-liner zingers in there. I'd be willing to bet you're a Monty Python fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I love Monty
I
Python.
know. I can
Yes.
tell by your sense of humor. When you sent me the picture, Big Wang, because a lot of people text me because I sent them that you were going to be on, and they saw it in the background, and I said, "Yeah, he's got a good sense of humor. It's going to be a fun interview." So I'm listening. I'm from the picture to your little zingers. I could tell you got to be a Monty, because I love Monty Python.
They're a big influence on me,
Right.
and I've turned my kid, you know, onto Monty Python. But it's actually I used to, back in the 70s, before Wang Chung, when I was learning to play, and I was in a band with John Moss from Culture Club, the drummer from Culture Club, and we went to school together, you know, and then we got a band together, and we learned how to play together. You know, it was all very early days kind of stuff. But we ended up. John was made friends with a friend of Graham Chapman, who's one of the Monty Python guys.
Yep.
And we actually rehearsed for a while in the front room of Graham Chapman's house in Highgate in London. You know, and it was total insanity, the whole thing. I mean, I think, God bless him, Graham Chapman was going through he was a bit of an alcoholic at that moment, that time. And but it was quite an experience. And then we were a bit starstruck by Graham Chapman and the whole Monty Python thing. But to be rehearsing in his house, that was completely bizarre. Okay. And then every evening he used to ring up Harry Nilsson in Los Angeles. Harry Nilsson, you know, they were really good friends. Harry Nilsson, Keith Moon, and I forget who else it was. We always just have to stand around the phone and sing "I Can't Live If Living Is Without You." We have to sing it with all of us, including Graham Chapman.
I can see
with a stony face, over the top kind of delivery. It was the most bizarre thing we ever, transatlantically over the phone. Yeah, it was very weird. You know, for a sort of young guy like me at the time, it was sort of, what the fuck, can I swear on this, by the way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what the fuck is going on here? But it was amazing too, so I'll never forget that.
Well, think about how many years ago that was. That memory, it still stays with you. So that's one of those great stories.
It really was, yes.
But psychology part, I know you just studied a little bit. You said you were fascinated with it, but you didn't stay with it. Where I was curious, where I wanted to go with that question was, did psychology help you later on in the music business? Because I hear so many artists say the psychology, the business side of it, because a lot of people actually did study psychology that went into music.
Yeah.
Did psychology play a role later on dealing with contracts or business people and so on?
Well, I mean, the reason I was originally interested in psychology is because it interested me. I mean, in other words,
right.
and I think I'm sort of fairly intuitive and sort of empathetic, as well as opposed to just pathetic. I'm empathetic. So, you know, it's something that always fascinated me. The course that I actually did at Liverpool University, as I said, was more alcoholology than psychology. But so I can't say that I learned an awful lot about psychology from that course. But in the sort of in the University of Life, certainly, absolutely, I've learned a lot, and totally and absolutely, it applies to pretty much everything I've ever done, you know. So it's given me insights into myself, into my own creativity. Okay. I think also into, you know, Jack's, for example, or or the people I've come into contact with, or how to approach things, or it's sort of it's a fascinating. Or doing shows. That's a whole psychological thing you have to go through. So and how you deal with when things go wrong, or how you deal with things going right, or whatever it is. So yeah, absolutely, it's very, very important. And it's helped me to help other people too, having been on the other side of the business too, quite, significantly. I'm sure we'll get onto that later, but having become an A&R guy and worked for, big record companies and managed people and produced, and again, psychology, it's all psychology. It's all about sort of motivating people, sort of getting the best out of them and out of yourself,
Okay. If the story is correct, in the 70s, you put an ad in the British music magazine Melody Maker, basically for a singer. Is that correct?
Not quite. You've almost got it right. It was in the Melody Maker, and it was in the 70s. Yeah, it was sort of on the sort of during punk times, when punk was really kind of hot in the UK and especially in London. And I was looking for a guitar player, actually. I'd made these demos. I'd been working, after I got thrown out of university, I came down to London with I've got to get into I really got to get on with my life here in music, So I sort of bullshitted my way into a job as a kind of booker stroke agent in a small booking agency in Tin Pan Alley in Soho in London. And I told them I'd been social secretary at Liverpool University, which was a complete lie. I hadn't been at all. But they kind of believed me, and they kind of liked me, I guess. I must have said something right in the interview, and they hired me, as I was 19 or something like that. And then I sort of, it was really stimulating, because at that time, punk was just beginning to break. And I, as a young guy, really kind of found it exciting, and started to, bring in all these bands that the people who were working there didn't really get. It was all sort of, it's not proper music. What are you doing? Get on with booking our roster, all of which was dreadful. But but I brought, I was getting bands like The Clash, gigs. I got them for a gig for £10, and I discovered Adam and the Ants. I was getting them some shows, and the band called The Only Ones. I got them signed. It was really exciting. The Sex Pistols were rehearsing just in a basement over the road from the office, next to this kind of little Italian cafe I used to have my lunch in. So I used to see all these pictures. It was really exciting times, and you felt something was starting to happen, and it was a young thing, really. I think the older people didn't really get it, so that always makes it even more exciting. So I did that for a while. It was great, but then I thought, I really want to do my own. What I really want is to have my own band. I don't want to be just booking other bands. It's great, but I'd rather do my thing. So I wrote these songs. I made these demos. A friend of mine was working in this tiny little studio in London, and every night on downtime, he said, "Do you want to come in and do some recording?" So I came in, recorded these songs. They were kind of like punk songs with slightly more bizarre, sort of harmonically weird chords.
Okay.
And thought, well, I'm going to get a band together around this. The drummer on those recordings was a guy called Paul Hammond, brilliant drummer, who used to play with the band Atomic Rooster. I don't know if you remember them. They were pretty successful in the.
No, but I saw the research that you talked about.
Yeah, they're a very successful band in the sort of metal kind of all hard rocks scene at the time. Had some hits and stuff, and he Their previous drummer was actually Carl Palmer, of Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yes.
So we went and recorded these songs. I played all the instruments, he played the drums, and they kind of turned out okay. So I thought, I'm going to get a band together. And so at that point, I decided to put this ad in the Melody Maker, and put all the money I had into it just to make me look important, and which I wasn't at all. And I had loads of response, but most of whom were crap, But Jack, that's when I met Jack. He walked in. I had this sort of complicated sort of guitar chord sequence. That was one of the tasks that the people had to do. Jack sort of nailed it really quickly, and I thought, okay, he's really good. And that's when we started to work together. I obviously picked him. I already had a bass player and a drummer. I was singing, and then we started working together. Jack started to write stuff as well, and then we gigged, and then Jack sang bits and pieces here and there. And then it was like, God, he's got a really good voice, So slowly but surely, it kind of evolved into Jack taking more of the vocal responsibilities, And that's how it all started.
Okay. Now, before Wang Chung and pronounced it was H-U, before it was W-A-N-G, it was H-U-A-N-G.
That's right.
Okay. And you were not Nick Feldman. You were Nick, I say it, Nick DeSpig? Is that how you say it?
Nick DeSpig.
Right.
That's a bit Monty Python.
What was the story? It sounds like something to do with your humor.
Yeah, it was. I mean, at the time, in the early days of punk, people had sort of silly names, like Lorry Driver or Persecution or, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so I was just getting into that spirit of silly names, and a friend of mine had this mythical character he'd be like a bit of a gangster, sort of Nick DeSpig. Nick DeSpig. So I just thought, okay, I love that.
Okay.
But no, it's nothing important. It's just silly.
Now, I don't know if this is correct or not, but it looked like you guys originally released Dance Hall Days in '82. Is that right? And then redid it in '84. What's the story? Because I don't know if that's right or not, but if it is, tell me.
It's right. It's right. What happened is when we were Wang Chung, we gigged around trying to get a deal. It was really tough, We got interest. Lots of record companies checked us out. We were kind of considered quite cool for a while, but we couldn't quite get that sort of. We were just lacking that one maybe song to get you over the line of a good deal, and then we got our manager at the time was sharing an office with a guy called Harry Barter, and he was like an old-time radio plugger guy. Mm-hmm. He had his radio plugging business, and he heard these demos that we'd recorded. One was called "Isn't It About Time We Were on TV," and another one was called "Stand Still." They were just little 8-track demos that we recorded, and he loved them. He said, "Oh, that's really cool. What would you like me to? I could put them out, and I could sort of try and get them on the radio for you. Do you want to sign a little independent, tiny? It's just him. The record company was just him." So we thought, well, okay, yeah, why not? That'd be great. And he, managed to get those tracks played on, national radio. Not playlisted, but we got quite a few plays. Okay. John Peel, the great John Peel DJ, played. That was our first ever radio play. It was on the John Peel show, So, and that put us sort of semi on the map, And it was then that we finally got offered a deal to cut a long story short, we got signed to Arista Records, and we made an album for them. And I've forgotten what the question was now. I'm rambling on.
That's okay. Let me ask you a question. Is your mic on your earphones? I don't know. Is it hitting your shirt? Because it's. I can hear you fine, but it's kind of a scratching.
Is that better?
Yeah, I don't know if your mic is hitting something.
Yeah, I'm holding it away, so maybe that's better now. Is that better?
Yeah, because it's kind of, I can hear you clear, but it's kind of hitting your shirt. I don't want it to be too
Ah,
distorted.
okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'll hold it like this. So,
Okay. Um, the question was, it came, Dance Hall Days came out in 82,
oh,
but you came back to it in 84, and that's when it became the massive hit
that's
for you.
right. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So as Wang Chung, we
That's Wang Chung,
recorded.
right.
We finally got a deal. We recorded an album for Geffen Records, for Arista
Yep,
Records.
yep.
You know, it didn't. You know, we had this song called "Hold Back the Tears." It was supposed to be the big hit, but it wasn't. You know, we knocked on the door. We nearly had the big hit, but we didn't quite nail it. And I think at that point, um, you know, the record company started to sort of think, oh God, maybe they are. You could see them losing a bit of faith in us. They weren't quite sure. They liked us, but and they were sort of trying to. They suggested maybe getting us to co-write with some hit writers and all that kind of stuff, which we didn't want to do. And just at that moment, at that time when we were really, you know, looking at the possibility of getting dropped and maybe, you know, of having had our sort of 10 minutes of fame, you know, not even 15, 10 minutes of fame, or 7 minutes maybe, you know. But then Jack sort of came up with this song called Dance All Days. You know, he said we used to get together every few weeks, and I'd play him my ideas, he'd play me his, you know, and he played me this thing, this the beginnings of an idea of this song, and I thought, wow, this is really something here. I got excited about it, and then we did a demo of it, and then everyone seemed to like the demo, and then the record company were like, okay, well, why don't you record it? So they fixed us up to record with the producer, Tim Freeze-Green, who produced Talk Talk. And we did this recording of Dance All Days, which sort of is okay, you know, but I think we felt it hadn't quite nail it quite right for us. But and the record company were like, oh God, maybe this is a hit, but then they weren't sure because they'd lost a bit of faith, so they were umming and ahhing about us. So it was around that time that a friend of my sister, this guy called David Massey, I met with him when he came. I used to live with my sister, and he came over to see her, and then we just got chatting, and I played David the songs that we'd recorded of the Wang Chung songs, and he was really he loved them, you know. And I had a really good chat with him, and I just thought, he had some really good comments and observations, and I just had this instinctive feeling that he would be a good manager for us. And so I asked him just then and there, do you fancy managing us, you know? And he was like, yeah, I'd love to. I mean, he was not even in the business at the time, so okay. I just liked him, you know, but he wanted to get into it. And so it was he who went out, when he heard the demo of Dance All Days, he played it to Geffen Records in the States. And they freaked out. They absolutely loved it. And they'd almost signed us before when we were Wang Chung, but they just, again, weren't quite sure we were ready. When they heard Dance All Days, the demo, they were like, wow, this is amazing. So we managed to persuade Arista to let us go. We paid them a few grand just to let us go. Mm-hmm. They were so unsure, they kind of agreed to it, which probably wasn't one of the best decisions they ever made. And we signed to Geffen. And from that moment on, it was, you know, it was a whole completely different kettle of fish, you know. And from that moment, we had a lot of success. We changed our name, right, or changed the spelling of the name. Right, right. I don't know if you're going to ask about that, but we were, you know, Jack and I were sick of the name Wang Chung because no one could ever pronounce it. Right. And it was constant annoyance, you know. People would call us all, get it all wrong, you know, like Hung Chung, and someone once called us Wayne Chandler. We thought, no, we've got to change this name. It's just ridiculous. So we wanted to change it completely. But it was David Geffen, when we signed to Geffen, David Geffen said, no, you can't, don't change the name. I love that name. It's so good. Just change the spelling so people can understand. So he suggested W-A-N-G instead of H-U-A-N-G.
Okay.
And we kept it. And, it, you know, kind of turned out okay.
I wasn't going to ask you, but my best friend since I've been 7 years old, Frankie Trelanky, who's a musician himself, he lives on Miami Beach. I watched a lot of clips on you guys, on you and Jack, when I do my research. And Jack said, we don't answer, because everybody asks you about the name or the meaning. Because I know they said to me, I've seen things like something about yellow Japanese flower or something like that, or something.
I mean, there's lots of there are lots of meanings to it. You know,
you guys obviously have an inside joke or something about it, but so far you've never told anybody what it was. And Jack said we never will. Are you going to do it on my show? Or you're not going to do it?
We'd have to kill you and all your viewers if we told.
Well, Frankie, I tried. Okay.
No, I mean, look, it's a sort of, I think what's great about it, I mean, it does mean something, but it also means nothing.
Right.
And it's, I think that's the strength of it, because there's a sort of mystery to it, you know, and it's almost like a blank canvas where you can put whatever you want to onto the meaning of it, like you would project a movie onto a screen, you know. Because
you sent me a picture of you with Big Wang in the background, I got to tell you, it's like almost reminiscent of Chuck Berry with My Ding-a-Ling. So I don't know if that's if it's a part of the anatomy or what, but we'll leave it at that. It could totally be that, if that's what you want it to mean. Yeah, that's, you know. In 85, or it might have been 84, but you guys scored one of my favorite movies of all time, To Live and Die in LA, which actually, I love a lot of your songs, all the hits, I love them. But my personal favorite is To Live and Die in LA. I love that song. Thank you. You're welcome. What was it, William Friedkin, I mean, Exorcist, and so many, I mean, he's a legendary director, and he's still with us. God bless him, he's still alive. Yes. Two questions. What was it like? Well, first of all, is this story correct? Because supposedly he did not want, if the story is correct, a song as the title of the movie. But you guys still, you and Jack scored it, right? That's right. Okay. So you brought it, if the story is correct, you brought him the song as To Live and Die in LA, which was the name of the movie. And he was like, oh, he didn't really want that. But when he heard it, supposedly, he loved it and he kept it as To Live and Die in LA. Is that story true? Yeah, I mean, I'll flesh it out a bit. Okay. So I mean, he originally heard our album Points on the Curve. I think he was in London and he heard it, something on the radio, or someone turned him onto it. And he really got into the album, and he really particularly loved a track on the album called Wait, which has got this very sort of fast, gritty sort of beat with sort of very atmospheric, big sort of slow moving chords. And I think he loved that the feeling of it. And he was using that song as a kind of temp track on the rushes of what he was, on the edits of the movie as he was sort of putting it together. And then I think he probably had this bright idea of like, well, instead of using this found bit of music, why don't I just go to the source, you know, and ask Wang Chung if they'll actually, why don't we get them to do it, you know? So he rang us up. He rang Jack up, actually, and Jack had a conversation with him, and he told, basically, the brief was just, I love Wait. This is the atmosphere I want, you know, long form, gritty, sort of atmospheric music. Don't worry, I don't want a song. There's no songs, just give me music, and go into the studio, be sort of spontaneous, and send me stuff, send me 45 minutes of music, and there we go, you know. So that's what we did. We went to the studio. We were very, you know, much maybe more spontaneous than we had been up to then, you know. Jack had this sort of sketched, this kind of architecture of a piece, you know. We went in there and we really just got our heads down, and it was such an enjoyable
fresh sort of experience. You know, I looked at some rushes, and we'd read the script, but I think Friedkin didn't want us to get into sort of literally being too literal about how we were interpreting it. Just wanted a more general feel. So we did that. It took about 3 weeks for us to do it, and we sent it over to him. And he was just blown away and loved it, you know, and started to edit the actual movie, the visuals to the music in many cases, which is extraordinary. You know, it doesn't happen that way around usually. But he, you know, hadn't wanted any songs. It wasn't what he was looking for. And I don't know, I think Jack just sort of woke up one day and thought, he just had this song called To Live and Die in LA. It just came out of him. And he sort of rang me up. So I've written a song called To Live and Die in LA. And he played it, and it was like, wow, this is great. Let's just send it to Friedkin. And Friedkin, of course, was so into what we were doing that he couldn't resist it, you know, and which actually triggered him to not only, well, he actually he shot a scene especially for the song. So it was amazing. And then it was from that point on that we decided that there was an opportunity maybe to make not just to do a soundtrack, but to make it our next sort of Wang Chung album, to make it into a proper thing, not just a soundtrack, more than that. So we wrote more songs for it, even though Friedkin hadn't asked for them. And, you know, and we wrote a few, so we had one side of songs, one side of instrumental. It became an integral.
I had that on cassette, wore it out.
Great. And it was sort of an integral, it sort of hung together as a Wang Chung record, not just a soundtrack. And I think once Geffen had, there was a song called To Live and Die in LA, you know, that they could sort of focus their promotion on and try and put out as a single. Then I think they got a bit more behind it. I think, you know, up to that point, they were maybe a bit, oh, can't you just sort of get back on the horse of writing hits, and we got to do your next album, you know, right. Forget all this Hollywood bullshit, you know, that's not going to help us. So they were sort of not that into it at first, but once we turned it into our next album, I think they really got behind it, and it became, you know, the film did very well, and it was very good for us, and it sort of took the pressure off us having to write a sort of another Dancehall Days Part 2 kind of thing, because there was a lot of pressure from the record company to do that. So it was a wonderful experience, and I think it really was good for us in many ways, you know.
Did you? And I liked how you guys did the video and they put the scenes in there, because I always like when you see Willem Dafoe blowing on the thing, because it's fake currency. You know?
Yeah, amazing.
And it lights up, because he was great in that when he put the chips in the drying machine and he put the money, the counterfeit money, and they would do it. Did you meet, just out of curiosity, because he's one of my favorite actors, did you meet Willem Dafoe?
We did, yeah, we did. We met him, I think it was when Friedkin was editing the movie. In fact, it's pretty mind-blowing, the whole thing, the whole experience for us, two guys from London, you know, and suddenly finding ourselves in Hollywood and working with these sort of legend like William Friedkin and the people that, you know, the caliber of the people that he was working with was pretty amazing, you know. So for us, it was really brilliant. Yeah, we met him then. I remember Friedkin, he was sort of sitting by the editing machine, and I think he was showing stuff to Willem Dafoe, who was very sweet, quite shy really, but you know, but very nice. And then Friedkin gets this phone call. So Friedkin's telling us, he's a great raconteur, William Friedkin. He can tell these amazing stories, and they go on for a long time, and they're very amusing. And so anyway, so he's telling us this long, convoluted story. I forget what it was, and suddenly there's a phone call for Friedkin. You know, phone call, William. There's a phone call for you. So he's telling us this story. He cuts the story off, takes the phone call. He has this blazing argument with whoever it was. It turns out that it was the head of Technicolor who was ringing him up. And he has his argument. He puts the phone down, he's on with the story in exactly the same place as he'd been cut it off. He was like, wow, he's so cool. But yeah, no, it was really great meeting, you know, all these people and freaking. It was wonderful, and he's remained a good friend, you know, ever since, you know.
You know what's also interesting about that movie, and I know you remember this, with William Peterson, who went on to CSI fame. I think it was CSI.
That's right.
But
that's right.
It was weird too in that movie because he was pretty much the star. Willem Dafoe was making a career, but he really blew up after Platoon, which was the next.
That's right.
But Peterson, everybody that's watching, this is a disclaimer, I'm giving it away. Peterson gets his head blown off. He's the star, and he winds up getting killed at the end, which you don't usually see that.
No, it was a very shocking end, wasn't it?
Yeah, very shocking ending. Okay.
Yeah, you don't. It totally went against all the sort of what you'd expect.
Yes.
And they actually shot an alternative ending.
Oh, really?
I think there was a certain amount of pressure, I think, to sort of make the ending a bit cuter, you know, because it was so bleak, you know, what happens in the movie. And I think Freakin' did. I think you can find it on YouTube actually. Okay. The alternative ending that was never used.
Okay.
And it's good that it wasn't, because it ruins the impact of the movie. But yeah. Yes.
Interesting. Now, videos. You and Jack did some of the best 80s feel, just fun videos. But was it as fun? It was fun for us watching. Was it fun for you and Jack making?
I hated them. I found them miserable experiences personally.
You faked it well.
Actually, talking of videos, I mean, the video to Live and Die in LA that you just mentioned was actually, Freakin' was so, you know, into us that he offered to direct the promo video of To Live and Die in LA. So he directed that. He's actually in the video directing us. So it was pretty amazing for us to be directed by him. But yes, I found videos a bit boring. I mean, because I was maybe slightly less busy than Jack, you know. I think inevitably, if you're doing most of the vocals, you're going to be doing most of the sort of shots, you know. So I remember, I think it was one of the videos where it was To Live in, no, what was it? Don't Be My Enemy, I think it was. Okay. And you know, we always used to get these really early morning calls, you know, to get down to the set. So you'd have to be there at 6 a.m. or something, and then you'd be there all day and night. And you know, quite often I'd get there really early. You know, you get all made up and get ready and everything, and then you don't get called for your first shot till, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours later. You know, and I just got so fed up with that happening every video that I was just like, in the end, I just said, look, do I really need to get there? But on that particular, I think this video, you know, I was wearing this white suit and I was looking all kind of cool at the time maybe. And I've been waiting all day for my shot. And eventually, at last, they came to me and said, you know, right, Nick, you're on, it's time for your shot. So I had this cup of tea in my hand. I put it down on the floor, and by some weird gravitational sort of anomaly, all the liquid of the tea came up. I don't know how it happened. Against the laws of nature, came right up and covered my entire white suit with tea just before my shot. So, yeah, of course, lots of hair dryers and stuff kind of sorting me out. But I just thought, I've got to stop. You know, I've got to stop. I've got to turn up later because this is just not happening for me. You know.
Okay.
And it turned into an awful video as well. But don't tell anyone.
Yeah, no one's watching. MTV VH1 for so many artists in the 80s was a big deal. It helped you guys' careers out immensely across the board. Do you not see them today because the record business has changed so much that they don't want to put the money into it? Or what is the reason that you don't see them anymore?
See what?
So in your day, you had MTV, you had VH1. So you
yes.
had videos that helped everybody's career as well to get you out there on top of the music. You just don't see the shows anymore. Is it because I know from talking to a lot of people I've interviewed that the music business has just changed so much. But is it
Yes.
dollars? Is it a money thing that they don't want to put money into the videos anymore? Or what do you think it is?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, obviously, many acts do have the budgets, if you know, the bigger ones make these very still quite sort of what's the word, spectacular videos. But I think it's I think video is still very important, isn't it? I mean, I think you see many videos of people, of acts who are quite modest, you know, who maybe don't even have a deal, you know. And I think that's partly because, you know, everyone's got an iPhone or a smartphone or some means of making or getting access to sort of simple editing software or whatever it is. So I think you can put together, like we're doing here, for example, where it's amazing with Zoom and everything, what you can actually broadcast, you know, something that looks great, you know, and not be part of a sort of TV network, you know. So it's empowering, I think, to people, the technology that's available in a very simple sort of usable form, you know. So I think video is still and visuals are still very, very important.
Okay.
And that, but the budgets, yeah, budget's a whole different kettle of fish now. Record companies no longer sort of control the means of distribution that they used to. And I think they have to be their margin for error of, you know, the sort of money they put into any given act their margin for error is much smaller, so they're much more careful. So yes, those budgets are no longer, and of course record sales aren't what they used to be either, you know, so inevitably they have to be more careful with what they spend, you know.
Gotcha. 86, the year I joined the Navy, because you and I talked about the dog.
Yeah.
You're wearing your dog tag. I know it had.
Yeah.
That's the year I went in. I was 18.
That's
You guys
amazing.
came out with Mosaic. The album was Mosaic, and that's where you had Everybody Have Fun Tonight was on that album, which
That's right.
was a smash hit. Talk
Mhm.
about going in the studio. Well, before you do that, I saw an interview with you and Jack, and they asked your favorite song, and they asked Jack's favorite song. And if I remember, didn't Jack say his favorite song was like Mosaic, or was that a name of a song too?
No, it wasn't the name of a song.
His favorite song, I couldn't find it on YouTube because I'm interviewing Jack like 20 minutes after we get done.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, tonight.
Well, his song, I think our favourite songs sort of change by whatever we happen to feel like at the moment that we're asked the question.
Okay.
When you say favourite, I mean, I don't know what my favourite Wang Chung song is. That varies. You know, I love Everybody Have Fun Tonight for all sorts of reasons.
Okay.
I think it's sort of, it made our name, Wang Chung, a sort of household name, you know. And you know, so the fact that we put it into the song and the fact that it gets name checked everywhere, you know, in all these big shows as punchlines, and you know, I love that. You know, I think it makes it sort of almost part of the culture in a way that is not just as straightforward as you would normally have as a pop band or a rock band. You know, it's different. So, and it's like almost a figure of speech, you know, or a sort of, you know, it's even in the Urban Dictionary, actually.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I love that. I get a lot of pleasure from that. And I think Everybody Have Fun Tonight was a good collaboration between us, you know. And I think that the way it's still, when we perform it live, you know, the kind of impact it has on the audience is, how can you not enjoy that? So I appreciate, and of course it's earned us a few dollars here and there, you know, that song. So I'm grateful to it, you know, and so yeah, I don't know if it's my favourite song or not, but I'm grateful to it, and I have a good relationship with it, shall we say?
You had mentioned earlier John Moss, but I'm going to ask you something now about him. So when you and Jack, when Wang Chung kind of broke up, you and John got together, and was your band called Promised Land?
That's right. Yeah.
Talk about that experience.
Yeah. So we kind of, we never sort of formally split up, me and Jack.
Okay.
But by the end of the 80s, we sort of effectively did split up, you know, even though Wang Chung continued to get, you know, lots of airplay and our songs were in movies, and we were constantly asked if we wanted to tour. And so, you know, it was sort of very much alive in the culture, but Jack and I had gone our separate ways. And so it was in 1990, and there's a lot of sort of big change going on. It was an important year, and certainly in the UK. And we had what was called the Summer of Love, you know, and that's when acid house and dance music really started to bubble up from the underground and really be. So we did this anonymous cover of Thunderclap Newman's "Something in the Air." It just, I had this idea to do it, but using the kind of soul to soul beats of the, yeah. So we did this. We kept our sort of identity secret, and because it did feel like there was something in the air. It felt there was a real change going on, and so, and it just captured the moment, I think. And we put it out on our manager's little independent label, and it's became this underground dance anthem, you know. And we got Single of the Week and NME, and you know, having if they'd known who we were, we would have been, you know, completely slagged off. But because we were this anonymous, cool group called Promised Land, you know, so yeah, that's. And John was, we were just, you know, we'd been in a band together. We'd learnt to play together.
Are you still mates? You guys still mates?
Yeah, we're still friends. Yeah, I mean, he'd sort of. You know, Culture Club would split up, you know, and so I think, and then Wang Chung had sort of split up. So we were both kind of, you know, just fancied to see what would happen if we just did this thing. It was just spontaneous. There was no plan. It was just like, just do this, you know. Okay. And then it became successful, and then we got a deal with Epic Records, and we made an album, and so it suddenly became something almost by accident, you know. Okay. But it was a good time, and I really enjoyed that project.
Cool. Now, another off of the music, if this is correct, you became a founding investor in a multimedia software company called Interactive Ideas. Is that
yes,
correct?
That's true. Very good.
Talk about that.
That was from a friend of mine from school who, I suppose, towards the end of Wang Chung in the 80s and early 90s, you know, I was fascinated by the idea of multimedia. I just had this sense that the future was going to be a sort of a kind of balanced integration of audio and visual, and obviously you know, computers and stuff like that were still, you know, it was very early days, and the internet didn't even exist. But there was this big, my friend was telling me about this thing called CD-ROM, where you could store, you know, you could interact with
you know, they're going to laugh at us. They're going to say we're two old farts like CD-ROM. I mean, no.
Exactly. Well, that was right at the beginning of what turned into, you know, the internet, you know, but I sensed that it was going to go somewhere. And he had this idea to just develop a company that was dealing in this multimedia kind of vehicle, using sort of bigger storage things with CD-ROMs. And then he wanted me to get involved in the company. But I kind of skirted the edges of it, but I did put a little, you know, I didn't have a huge amount of money, but I had enough to make an investment. Okay. And then he ran with it, and eventually it became a very successful company, and it got into all sorts of software and stuff like that. Okay. And distribution, and it became a very successful company, and it was sold, and you know, I didn't do too badly out of it. You know, it was one of the best investments I've ever made, you know. Okay. So, but I'm very interested in things that are sort of visionary and where they can lead. And I think my instincts were pretty good actually on that, I have to say.
Okay, cool. Now you had mentioned earlier, and it's one of my questions. You worked in A&R. Now A&R, if I remember correctly, isn't it artist and repertoire? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Talk briefly about working in A&R.
Well, I suppose after Wang Chung had split up, then I did Promised Land. Then I did a couple of other projects, and I think I felt I reached this point where I think I was creatively a little bit burnt out. So having to generate everything yourself, when when you have your own project, when your own band, or you have to initiate everything. The buck stops with you, and that's great. I mean, that's ultimately a very exciting place. But I think I was just interested to maybe spread my wings and work with other people's creativity. So to take their creativity and then try and help them and enhance their creativity as opposed to me originating it. And also to do it with different people as opposed to, when you're in a band, it's very sort of quite narrow. It's again, I'm not criticizing it. It's very rewarding, but I think at that point I wanted to spread my wings a bit. So to get a job as an A&R man working on the creative end of a record company and working with multiple different artists and in doing a different sort of role using psychology, to go back to what we were talking about before, I think, and my musical knowledge and my experience, I think that combination was quite good actually. I could sort of talk to the musicians in a language they understood. I could empathize with them. I could sort of get into their heads a little bit and help them to sort of get them through more challenging things,
You're a nurturer. Listening to you, you're a nurturer, and you're taking which I admire. You're taking your experiences. You became kind of the elder statesman.
Yes.
That's nurturing. I mean, that's compassion. That's
yes.
nurturing. I respect you for that.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It's rewarding. I found it fascinating actually, and I learned a lot. And it was good to work with different sorts of people, so you get new insights, and it was a fresh thing. The negative side is that obviously I was working for corporations, and after all, I did it for 10 or 12 years, and worked with some really big people and some impressive people too, but at the end of I think by the end of it, I'd sort of burnt out on it.
Okay.
But was very grateful that I did it, and it was very interesting, and it was great to get to on the other side of the desk and have that insight. So I think that's it certainly enriched me. Well, obviously I earned well out of it, but more importantly, it enriched my sort of education, life education, and I think I feel all the better for having done it.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to do it again.
I hear you.
I've been there, done that.
I hear you. Now, yet another thing, because you've done you're very diverse. You were, or I don't know if you still are, if this is correct, you were a judge and a talent scout for the BBC One Show The Voice. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that.
I mean, that sort of springs out of my work as an A&R guy. It's working for record companies. Again, I think it was something sort of new at the time. I worked on the first 5 seasons of The Voice in the UK. It was a new.
Did you sit at the table like Simon, or you were behind the scenes?
Well, no, I had different roles. So okay. One of my roles was to scout. Okay. Scout promising singers who maybe would do well on the show, so to get them in and to encourage them to come and audition. That's one of my roles. The other role was to do the regional auditions. So we used to travel around the country, okay. Auditioning people, yes, sitting behind a desk, you know, they come in, sing, and you talk to them, ask them questions. And again, it was from the psychology of it, I found fascinating. Hearing all their different stories, you know, like I did when I was an A&R man, and people would come to me trying to get me to sign, or talking to the artists, hearing the sort of excuses people have, or the blocks, the obstacles they put in their own way for not sort of stopping themselves doing things because they're frightened or whatever it is. And it was so interesting to hear some of these people say stuff like, you know, I live to be a singer. You know, I would do anything to. It's the most important thing in my life. You know, and then you'd go, well, so what singing do you do? And they go, well, I don't really, because you know, I've got a job and I don't really have the time. You know, and you think, well, you know, if it means that much to you, that's not how I was when I started out. I lived, you know, I really did live for it, and you take the pain with that as well. So you learn how to sort of you know, see through people's self-delusion, you know, because they're kidding themselves. It's not the most important thing to them, you know. I'm just talking about certain types of.
No, I understand.
There are many people who really did live for it, you know what I mean? And you learn how to sort of pick the ones out that you feel have got the right stuff, the right attitude, you know, to make it in what is a very difficult thing, you know.
Okay. In my research, I found a chestnut for me. 2019, you and Jack recorded. I don't want to mispronounce it. Or how do you say it? Orcheography? How do you say it?
Yeah, I know, it's a disastrous name, isn't it?
I don't want to.
That's Jack's fault. That name. It's orchesography.
Okay.
Orchesography. It was actually that was a classical record shop near where Jack used to live when he was a teenager.
Okay.
It was called Orchesography, so that's where he thought of that name.
Okay.
And I stupidly agreed to it.
Okay. Which looks like it was about your seventh studio album. Well, you redid your greatest hits, but you did it with the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I listened to the thing. It's fantastic. I love it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I know you're not a fan of videos, but I love the current video of everybody have fun. First of all, you and Jack got some really nice fucking clothes. I got to say it like that.
Thank you, man.
I don't know if you picked them out or they picked them out or who picked them out.
No, we picked them out, yeah.
You guys are sharp. And that with the sunglasses on, and it's really, really fast. And you may not like videos, but that's a cool damn video.
Well, you know, thank you. That's really great for you to say that. It was a kind of homage to our own video from the 80s, of course. Right. But I just to clarify things, I much more enjoy doing videos in my old age than I did back in the 80s.
Okay.
Because it's much more sort of, I don't know, it's just, you're just much more involved somehow, and it's you've got more control, and so yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that.
Talk about recording with that Philharmonic Orchestra, because that's a great sound.
Oh, I'm glad you feel that way about it. That's an album I'm proud of. I think we hadn't ever recorded with done something like that before. So it was we were just approached out of the blue. I'll tell you how it happened. I'd been touring with, as Wang Chung with Mike Score of Flock of Seagulls.
Yes. We
became quite friendly, and he'd done this. He'd also done some recording with the Prague Philharmonic.
I actually saw it. I just saw it last night. After your video, it went into recommended his.
Yes. So so the record company had asked him, are there any other sort of bands that you think might be interested in doing some more, recording with the Prague Philharmonic? And he said, yeah, Wang Chung, because he really likes Wang Chung. And we're friends, and he put our name forward, and they approached us, the record company, with this idea, and it really appealed to me instantly, because again, we hadn't done it before. I think our music sort of compositionally is quite what's the word, I think it fits different genres and different interpretations, it's quite cinematic, so I felt it could work really well, I told Jack about it, and he was a bit, I don't know. I think he thought it could be a bit sort of corny, bit cheesy. But I said, no, I think we can. I think he was a bit concerned.
He likes classical music.
He does. I mean, we both love classical music, but I think he was already sort of thinking about his solo record, and I think he thought that if it wasn't done right, it could be a bit sort of cheesy. I understand that, but I said, as long as we have a bit of control with this thing, which and we will have to insist on it, otherwise we shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So if we're just going to be like puppets for someone else to make a record with us just fronting something that someone else has done, then we shouldn't do that. But if we can get creative control, I think we can do a really good record. And I managed to persuade him, and it went really well. And we both, contributed a lot to it, and it was a real experience. And going to Prague, it's a beautiful city, and working with this orchestra, and and working in their studio, which is a lot of history in that studio. Mm-hmm. It used to be like a Soviet, when it was still a communist country. It was the Soviets who used it as their sort of main studio, and then before that, Einstein. Was it Einstein? Einstein used to lecture in that. Wow. Albert Einstein used to lecture in that room, and then I think it was also a Nazi dance hall apparently during the war. So I mean, you got this incredible sense of history there. So the whole experience was amazing, for us. We both really enjoyed it, and I think it turned out well. So I'm glad you like it.
Fantastic, I loved it, and I don't.
Thank you.
I don't mean. I want to give you your props and stuff that I'm going to look down at my notes because I want to read it word for word. Earlier this year, you and Jack did a thing called Back to the Basement show.
Yep.
Okay. And I want to give you props because it really, really touched me. I actually had Debbie watch it at 3 o'clock. I was doing research late last night because I had to do your research and I had to do Jack's research. And I kind of waited to the last minute because I like watching stuff formulated in my head and then put it to paper. That's the way I do my research. But you did this Back to the Basement, and I give any artist, I've interviewed Marielle Trump, Donald Trump's niece that wrote the book about him, saying he's the worst fucking guy in the world.
Yes.
Which he is. She's coming on Sunday.
Great.
I always give people credit because you don't have to do it, but you use your social media platform, your public platform, and it may alienate, especially in your case in Jack's, it may alienate some of your audience. But to me, there's a bigger picture. Humanity is bigger than all of any audience or any one individual. That's how I feel.
Absolutely.
You did everybody have fun tonight, but you changed it to everybody be safe tonight, right?
That's right.
But where you touched me is you had, there you go. I love it. A mask, folks. You see that? You had the Vapors. You had David Sterry, who I just interviewed, who spoke very highly of you.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy.
He held up a sign. But at the very end, Nick, you held up the sign and it said, "Stay safe from the disease. COVID-19, racism, and oppression are diseases." Now, we have those issues around the world. So I don't want to just put it on one individual, though I'm going to talk about that individual. We have a president for the next 62 days in as what I call the QVC house, because he sells stuff out there like the QVC fucking channel, who is guilty of racism, oppression, and a lot of other things against humanity.
Yeah.
It touched me because my father, God rest his soul, marched with Dr. King in '63. He fought for gay rights against somebody named Anita Bryant in Florida in the 1970s. And he fought for any person that was an underdog and that was discriminated against, whether it was for their color or for their sexuality or whatever. So when I saw you hold up that sign, it made me think of my dad. I actually got tears in my eyes because it touched me that you did that. You didn't have to do that, but you obviously felt that. And there was other people too that did their stuff. And I give Jack credit too, because with changing the name and doing all that. But you held up that sign at the very end.
Yeah.
Because we have currently a president right now who is a racist, who oppresses and does all of those type of things. I commend you and I thank you for doing that, because you guys are huge. You have a huge platform. You have a huge following. And I know, being in this business, that could alienate some people. But you took the humanity and went above a fan base or a record company or selling an album or any of that stuff.
Exactly.
I want to thank you for that.
Well, that's amazing for you to say that, and it's very touching for you to hear it, and especially what you said about your dad. That I find that very touching, and I couldn't have wished for, you know, a better response to, you know, to me doing that, you know, and us doing what we did. That's exactly the sort of response we would have hoped for. So if that inspired anyone to do anything, then that's got to be a good thing. Yes, I mean, look, you've got to say what you feel, haven't you?
Yes.
I mean, that's looking at what's happening in America right now. I mean, with, you know, what Trump is saying about the election, which is just it's a disgrace. It's a blatant attack on democracy and the American institution, or constitution, I should say. And it's shocking, you know. And the fact that the Republican Party appear to be sort of staying quiet over it,
Or
and not.
No appearing. They are. I've tried to get all of them on my show to ask them tough questions, because they go on what we call here state news media, which is Fox TV, which is just insanity like them. I can't get any of them to come on because they refuse to answer tough questions.
Yeah.
They're aligned. They're so far up his orange ass and aligned with him. It's just, I've never seen anything like it I'm 52 years old. And in the last 30 years, I've never seen anything like it, ever.
I think it's very dangerous playing with fire, because, you know, America has some very proud traditions. Look, nowhere's perfect. America's got a lot of problems, as the UK does. So I'm not in any way lecturing Americans on at all. Far from it. You know, I think you know, there's lots of things that we shouldn't be too proud about over here. But nonetheless, I think there's lots of great things about America, and I think it's being attacked by, I don't know if everyone's thinking this through, because, and it's easy to blame everything on Trump. I think he's a truly dreadful man. I think he's a man who's morally bankrupt. You know, I just think he's not fit for office of America, in my opinion. But I don't think you can blame everything onto him.
No, you can't.
I don't think he hasn't created everything.
No,
he didn't create. I mean, even COVID. You know, I think he's done a disgustingly bad job on it. But would it have killed lots of people? Yeah, of course it would. You know, but so he's a kind of symptom and not necessarily the cause. I just think he's opened the door to a lot of bad stuff. You know,
he's opened the door. Racism was here way before he came.
Exactly.
Dog whistled it. He pushed it out there, and because he has the bully pulpit, they came where they grew balls to say it. They wouldn't have said it. They felt it, but they said it quietly. He pulled the Band-Aid or the whatever the door, the stage door like this, and they came running out behind him. So
absolutely
he started, but he definitely manifested it, or not manifested. He grew it. He catalyzed
it. Yeah, I think. But you know, 70, however many people voted for him, over 70 million people.
About more than last time.
And I don't believe that all of those people are racist and horrible people. I don't believe that. I think many of them have their reasons for not sort of trusting other things. You know, that's why they voted. I mean, I think they're sort of made a mistake, and I think the Republican senators are particularly. I think they're more worried about those 72 million people.
They are
more than Trump, actually. But it's a real mess, and I hope it resolves all right. You say he's only got 60. I hope it resolves.
Yeah, I agree with you. But on that point, I agree with you. But where I would disagree is that they had 4 years of his bullshit. So they re-voted for him 10 million more than they did last time. So
Yeah.
they may not all be racist, but here's the thing that I do say.
Mm.
When you get behind somebody, because I call it's a cult. It makes Jim Jones from Guyana back in the 70s look like a
Yeah.
amateur. It makes
Yeah.
it makes David Koresh in Waco, Texas in the 90s look like a rank amateur. And it makes
Yes.
Heaven's Gate, if you remember Heaven's Gate, that call,
Of course.
they cut their balls off those guys, which was just
Yes.
shit they did. He makes
Yeah.
them all look like rank amateurs with this cult following.
Yeah.
My one thing with the racism thing, because it's so very strongly, if you follow somebody blindly like they do, and he's a racist, which I 100% believe he is, he's proven it. You really don't get to pick and choose what trait. If you like Boris Johnson and he's these 20 things, you don't get to pick 17 of those 20 and say, well, those 3 things I'll just overlook. You own all of them, good or bad. You own all of their traits. So
Well, yeah, I agree.
that's the one place with the racism. I wanted to believe that they weren't all racist. But then if they weren't racist, then I feel, in my opinion, that they hate the same things that Donald Trump hates, because that's what he preaches, this hatred. So if they're not racist, then they hate that they think an immigrant is taking their job because Donald Trump says this.
I think there's clearly a lot of people who are racist, who are sort of very questionable in what they're sort of prepared to go along with. Yes, I don't doubt that there are, but I do think there are other people who are sort of feel forgotten and sort of disrespected, and he sort of is a kind of. Do you ever? I don't know if you watch Larry David. Do you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? I mean, I love that program.
Yeah.
And Larry David plays this sort of hyper Larry David persona. It's himself, and yet it isn't. And I've heard him talk about how he sort of, as Larry David in the show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, he's able to say sort of much more outrageous and do more outrageous things that Larry David in real life sort of wants to say, but can't really say.
Right.
So, and I think sort of Donald Trump is just similarly. He'll sort of say stuff that maybe most people, and speak as for a part of people who are feeling forgotten and disrespected and overlooked. He'll somehow sort of speak for them, and I think that's the appeal. So it goes beyond.
It is. You're right, Nick. It is. But the problem is he's a grifter and a con man. He never gave a shit about any of those people.
Of course not. No, I mean,
but they were disenfranchised. Oh, I agree. There was a segment of society that was left out, and he tapped into that, which was brilliant. He tapped into it, but he doesn't give a shit about the average man.
No.
More average men, contractors that worked on his hotels, and I mean, he doesn't give a damn about them. But
no, I agree. I mean, I'm not. If you don't misunderstand me. I'm not justifying Donald Trump, and I'm not justifying voting for him either, because I think it's like a turkey voting for Christmas. It's just it's like it's insane. But so no, I'm not. But I'm just trying to understand it, because it's so significant.
Yes,
it's so many people have voted for him, or for that. You can't just brush it under the carpet and just and sort of what's the word, reduce it to something. I think, what's that expression? No, I'm sure you know this. Know your enemy.
Yeah.
If you want to defeat your enemy, know your enemy. Understand your enemy, because that's going to be much better than just blundering into. Well, you're a military man. You understand it much better than I do. But I'm using psychology again, and I think
that's why I knew it tied in.
Yeah.
One more question before we segue into the fun random questions.
Okay.
You've performed, you played guitar, songwriting, A&R, talent scout, investor, and done so much to this point in your life. Is there one that's your most favorite, or all of them just for different reasons?
Good question. life is hopefully long, you know. So you go through different phases of your life, or and people aren't just one thing, are they? I think I've learned that in my old age. You know, even Donald Trump, who appears to be one thing, is probably maybe got other aspects to him. I don't know. Maybe he hasn't. But so everything sort of everything combines, doesn't it? Everything's part of a sort of yin and yang, or an integral whole thing. So I'm sort of pleased that I've managed to do lots of different things, and I think they all reflect a little bit of each part, you know, my different parts, you know. So I can't. It's like having children. I don't think you can say, "Oh, I like that one best." Well, maybe you can, but I wouldn't do that. But
there you go.
You know, so no, I can't say that I liked anything more than anything else. Maybe at any given time, I might have enjoyed one thing more than another. But,
Okay.
but I tell you what, but I am very grateful to Wang Chung. Very. I'm very proud of it. And as I've got older, I've learned how to be proud of it, because I went through a phase of almost being a bit embarrassed about it, you know. But no, I'm very proud of it now, and I appreciate it. And you know, you wouldn't be, if it wasn't for Wang Chung, I wouldn't be talking to you probably. So
Yeah.
it's great. It's opened my life up in a way that I am very grateful for.
Okay. Let's segue into, there's no right or wrong answers. Whatever comes off the top of your head, that's what we roll with. And then, unless you got to email me afterwards, but I can't edit it in. Okay. Favorite genre of movies that you enjoy?
Oh, good. I love movies. I can't give you a genre, but I can tell you I like. I'm quite. My son's a movie critic for his newspaper. He knows everything, and he can. I can watch a movie with him, and he'll predict the arc of the movie almost very quickly, because if it's not original, and he'll figure it out really quickly, and I can do that to a certain extent. So the movies I truly like are ones that truly surprise me, and I don't predict, and I can't guess where they're going to go. So movies that are intelligent, and I don't mean they have to be all sort of intelligent like that, but
Right.
just fresh, original,
Gotcha.
and unpredictable. That's what I like.
Okay. You remember the American show from the 70s, Barney Miller?
Barney Miller, yeah, I remember the theme tune,
Yeah.
actually,
Dun, dun, dun,
the
dun.
bass line.
Yep. Well, the star of it, God bless him, he's 89 years old. I just interviewed him, Hal Linden, and I asked him that question, and he basically said what you did, but he summed it up like this. He said, "Brad, this probably isn't the best answer, but this is my answer. Good movies." That's what he said. Good movies. And then he explained what you just said about not being able to figure it out 2 minutes into the movie. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually a brilliant example of what I'm talking about. And it's nice that you compared me to him. I'm very pleased to hear that. But the end of To Live and Die in LA, we were talking about it before.
Yes. You don't know
Talk
that?
about unpredictable. You don't expect that to happen, you know.
Absolutely. I know it's hard to name one, so if two maybe, what's your favorite two movies of all time?
Again, I'm so bad at doing this sort of thing. Oh dear, you've really caught me on the hop here. Can I come back to that?
Okay.
Because I like so many.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your favorite musical band from any era is who?
That's an easy answer.
Okay.
The Beatles.
Okay.
The Beatles, and I love Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to have two, but
Absolutely. In all the years, even before Wang Chung and when you were young, what is the best live musical concert you ever went and saw?
wow. Well, I've seen so many. I'm very lucky to have seen so many amazing concerts. But I suppose the most influential one was in 1969, when I was very young. Led Zeppelin had recently formed. You know, underground music was sort of, it was a new thing, you know. And some friends of mine had got tickets for Led Zeppelin in London. They're one of their first ever gigs they did.
Okay.
And I was like, people were like, who's that bloke Led Zeppelin? Who is, you know? So I went down. I was 13 or 14. Went down to see them. It literally blew my mind. Like, it's impossible to put into words. It utterly changed my life. You know, that gig was amazing.
You know, you mentioned Led Zeppelin, and I love Led Zeppelin. But I watched Dan Rather, who I have the utmost respect for. He does an interview show on what we have here called Axis TV. I think it's A.
Oh yeah.
And he does the big interview, and he's like, I love him, I adore him. He's like an
Yeah.
American treasure. He interviewed Robert Plant, and I
Yeah.
never knew that one of my favorite. You may know this, you probably do. That one of my favorite songs that they did, "All of My Love." I didn't know that was about his son that passed away. Did you know that?
I didn't actually know.
Yeah,
I didn't know
son
that.
died really, really young. I can't remember what he died from.
Yes, that's right. It did. Yeah, you're right.
That song, "All of My Love," because he started. I mean, I was in tears. He was in tears.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I was amazed by it because I love
Amazing.
that song. But
Amazing.
you and Jack didn't go into your hotel rooms and break them up because you were trying to be Led Zeppelin, were you?
Well, we were the mild men of pop rather than the wild men of pop.
Okay. All right. Favorite male singer, just a male solo singer.
Again, these are questions so hard to answer. You know what? I'd say Marvin Gaye. I love Marvin Gaye. Just I'm quite influenced by him, or very influenced by him. And that mixture, his range of singing is extraordinary, and his harmonic sense. I love Marvin Gaye. Yeah.
Okay, I do too. Flip it. Favorite female singer.
I love Joni Mitchell. I think.
Oh, yeah.
Again, there's so many, aren't there? But Joni Mitchell, what a great songwriter and an amazing performer. I love her. Yeah.
Okay. I asked this question of musical artists. So it's a romantic evening for you. Who do you put on to listen to on a romantic night?
It depends what mood I'm going for, because.
Romance.
Yeah, but what type of romance? There's an album you made.
Romance.
I like a bit of Brian Eno, so a bit of ambient music, or maybe there's a band, a UK band called Spiritualized, who was just one guy, and they did this record called "Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space." It's a really kind of almost psychedelic sort of real mood record, amazing record, and that's a great record to put on.
What's the name? I want to check that. What's the name of that group?
Spiritualized. It came out in the 90s, and the album is called "Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space."
Okay,
it's incredibly long form. Every song moves really slowly, and you just get sort of eventually, and it's a huge. The instrumentation is like massive, loads of people.
Okay.
And it's sort of just eventually just takes you away. I love that record.
Okay. Are you a car guy? Do you like cars?
No, I don't care about cars.
Okay. Do you have a favorite noise or sound you like to hear?
Well, actually, talking of Brian Eno, there's an app that Tom Bailey of the Thompson Twins told me about, and it's this sort of, it's called Bloom. I think it's called, is it called Bloom? And basically, it's like an art app. You just put your finger on you can have it on your phone, and you just sort of make little drawings, and each drawing has a sort of a kind of ambient sound, and then it kind of animates itself, and you create these kind of audio-visual things that just have their own life, and that makes a nice noise. So it's quite synthy sounding. Or to quote Nick Lowe, I love the sound of broken glass.
Okay.
There's a song in there. Yeah.
There you go. That's interesting you said it because David Sterry from Real Life, I go back to him again. He said something about I asked him that, and he has this machine. He actually did a video. I'll send it to you. And it was an old synthesizer, old acoustic something, and he was making sounds from it. And it's the same premise that
Yes.
you're talking about, but his was like one of those really old
Right.
machines, and he did a video. I'll send it to you.
Yes.
Flip that question, Nick. Your least favorite noise or sound?
Oh God. I think I'm fairly least favourite. Isn't it just the normal kind of fingers down a blackboard type thing, or that grinding sort of scratching sound?
That's Debbie's. Debbie said, whenever I ask this question, I ask these questions.
Yeah.
Debbie said it's the same thing, nails on chalk.
Yeah.
Well, here's one for you. You're a movie guy, right? You remember, I know you've seen Jaws. Remember Jaws?
Of course.
You remember the great Robert Shaw?
Of course, I love Robert Shaw, yeah.
Remember the scene when he was in the courthouse and they were hiring him to kill the shark, and he was doing the nails on the chalkboard. He was drawing it in chalk, the shark, and you heard that.
Exactly.
That drives me nuts.
That will go. I'll go for that one too, yeah.
There you go. Favorite food?
I'm favorite food. I love a bit of smoked salmon, actually.
Okay.
Smoked salmon, love that.
Okay.
Just neat, straight up smoked salmon.
Okay.
It can't be nothing with it. Just straight smoked salmon.
Okay. If you could hit the lottery for like the $200, $300, $400 million lottery, what would be the first thing you would do?
Go to the toilet.
That's the first. You got it. Good one. Good one. See, that's that Monty Python shit he's saying. That would be Eric Idle. John Cleese would say that. That's funny.
Do you want me to say more than that?
No, if that's your answer, okay.
Oops, sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go. Okay.
I was just thinking about winning that. Okay.
That's funny. Pre-COVID, favorite vacation destination?
My other half is Brazilian.
Okay.
Which we live together in London, but her mum lives in this amazing place in Brazil called Bonito, and which means beautiful. And it's not far from the Paraguay border of Brazil, Paraguay, and it's this beautiful sort of eco conservation area with these amazing clear rivers, and it's beautiful food and people, and it's a pretty stunning place.
Okay.
So we've been there a few times, and I love Rio too, of course, Rio de Janeiro. So,
okay. If you could meet one person from any time in history, dead or alive, who would you like to meet, and what would your first question be for them?
Wow. One person from history. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Frank Zappa. I found him a fascinating guy, and I actually did meet him once, but it was backstage at a TV show, and I was too shy to do anything about it. And then later on, his wife, Gail, who was a friend of our producer, Peter Wolf, who produced Everybody Have Fun Tonight and Mosaic. He used to be Frank Zappa's keyboard player.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, she invited me over to have a jam with Frank Zappa at his house.
Wow.
And I was so in awe of Frank Zappa that I didn't go. So I was too far. I just thought he'd sort of laugh at me, So I wish I'd sort of gone. I suppose it doesn't quite answer your question, but it nearly did.
Yeah. Okay. We've discussed a lot of things today. If you had to sum yourself up, Nick, in one or two sentences as a human being, what would you say?
Amazing and modest. No, I'm joking. What would I say?
No, I think you are modest. I do think you're modest. I do.
yeah, I'm not. What am I? I think I'd like to think I'm caring and insightful and intelligent, and like to think my own thoughts and not to be too much of a sheep, you know. So and you know, and creative, and I hope talented, you know.
Well, you're all of those. And I told you earlier, you're nurturing by just listening to your answers when you were doing A&R. Because,
Thank you.
and honestly, even in your emails, I mean,
Yeah.
and Jack too. I mean, both of you,
Yeah.
was no airs. There was no go through this publicist, talk to 3 people to get to this one or that one. You both
Yeah.
hit right back, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You've done interviews, many over the years, been asked a million questions, but I always ask this. Is there one question, I'm putting up 2 fingers, but is there one question over all the years that you were not asked by an interviewer? And if there is, what's the question and what's your answer?
Oh God, that's really. um, uh, I mean, we've been asked, you know, so many different questions, and you've asked quite a few. That's a really good one you just asked. I can't put my finger on anything particularly. I'm always, you know, as I was saying to you before, I sort of feel grateful that people are interested at all, you know. And if you would have told me 30, 40 years ago that even if we had some success, that people would still be interested when I'm, you know, in my 60s, and we would still have an active career, I would have thought you were mad, you know.
Right.
So, so I'm just kind of blown away that people still care and that we've still got this, you know, as I say, a very active career.
Okay.
So I'm pretty amazed that anyone's asked anything, quite honestly.
But see, that's humble, but you're humble. You've had a level of success, you and Jack, that they can never take away from you. It doesn't matter if you never have a hit again, if you just make records that just you and your kids enjoy, you and your significant
Exactly.
enjoy, it doesn't matter. You're
That's
in
right.
the books, you're in there, you've had your success. It doesn't,
Yeah.
you can't, you know, whether I always tell people that are arrogant that say, well, so and so is a has-been. I'm not saying that's your case, but they say so and so is a has-been. And I always say, and I have to credit my buddy Randy with this because he actually said that, and I don't take credit for it. He said, I'd rather be a has-been than a never was. Because
yes, exactly.
They're so arrogant. Oh, this, that, and the other. I'd rather be a has-been than never was. I'm not saying that you're has-been, but you're very humble. I'm going to go back to earlier question to give you another shot.
Oh my God.
1 or 2 movies.
That's so difficult. Oh, there's so many.
All right, what's the last one?
I mean, I love. I'm a big fan of William Friedkin, so I think French Connection, Exorcist, amazing films, you know.
Okay. Leave it at that. Leave it those.
Okay.
That's
all
fine.
right.
Finally, what is the saying, if you have one, that you live your life by?
Well, the first one is, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, so, and also, you know, just think for yourself. You know, and don't just because. Well, how should I put this? It's everything's made up. Everything's made up. So don't believe your own publicity or anyone else's.
Gotcha. If you would, for the viewers, your social media platforms where they can follow you. What are your social media platforms?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So, well, Facebook mainly. So Wang Chung Band, Facebook, and wangchung.com. So we're going to be releasing a huge retrospective of everything we've ever done, plus a load of other rarities and stuff. So check out those 2 sites for news about that. It's called Clear Light, Dark Matter. That it'll be news about that will be forthcoming.
Okay. And the last thing I like to do, I want to give you I want to give you the stage and the microphone. Send out a message to all of your fans from over all the years to current day.
Well, firstly, thank you everyone for being even interested, and especially now still. So you've sort of, we really appreciate it, and it's, you know, I'm all the richer for that experience of having you guys interested. And don't believe the hype, and stay safe. And
Hold up your mask. Hold up your mask.
Yeah. Everybody stay safe tonight.
There you go.
Okay. And be well and happy, and treat everyone else well.
Okay.
Respect people and treat them well.
All right. And I'm going to ask you one other question, even though I said that was my last, because they're going to ask me, I know it. What is it behind you? What is that? Because it almost looks like the Led Zeppelin graffiti album.
Oh, right. That is a painting. When I just told you, well, maybe I didn't say, but I was in January and December. We went to Brazil. We went to see my partner's family, and then we came back via Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
And we were walking through the market, and we saw this painting of an artist who had all these paintings, and one of them of the favelas. You know, so that's a picture of a painting of a favela.
Okay, I like that.
You know, in Rio, and we loved it, so we bought it off him, and we brought it back, and it's on my wall.
Okay, all right. Hey, I appreciate. I'll send you the link. I'll email you the link to the interview. I greatly appreciate you coming on. I knew it was going to be fun. Like I said, when you sent me the picture and it said Big Wang, I said this is going to be a fun one. But hey, Nick, I greatly appreciate it. In about 40 minutes, I'm going to have Jack on the show, and the Zoom thing again. Stay in touch, stay safe, and thank you too for all the years of great music. I really appreciate it, and I even appreciate more that you use your platform to speak out for what's right on the behalf of humanity.
God bless you, and thank you for saying that. And I really enjoyed talking to you.
Okay,
you're a good man. You're a good man.
Take care.
Cheers.
Hey, folks. Nick Feldman, Wang Chung, one of the biggest groups of the 80s, and what a class act. What a nice guy. What a nice guy. 2 hours. We almost talked for 2 hours like I was talking to my best friend I've known for years. See, this is what you get, and I'm proud of on the Bad Brad Berkowitz Show. You get a conversation, okay? I do put a lot of research into my interviews because I want to respect the interviewee because they deserve it, okay? Nick, again, compassion. I mean, just my type of guy. All right? So make sure you hit that button and subscribe. That's another show in the can. Forget about it. And remember, folks, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Bad Brad out.